Hi, Kate.
Hello.
How are you?
Good, thank you.
Thanks for making some time for us.
Okay.
Let's see here. Okay, so we'll just talk for about 10 minutes.
Sure.
It's not live. We'll just take the best parts, and we'll air this a little bit later this month.
Okay.
Yeah. So I know about your career before picture books, but what exactly made you want to venture into picture books?
I'm sorry?
What exactly made you want to venture into picture books?
I believe I was approached by Scholastic after my first book came out, and somehow that rings true to me. Ooh. It was a while ago though, because my book came out in 2011, so this has been kind of a long time coming. But as soon as they did, I said yes, of course. I don't think anybody would really flinch at that opportunity.
Right. But in sort of the longer work, I guess graphic novels and comics that you've done, you have more room in which to develop character, and one of the
Yeah.
beautiful things about picture books is everything is really condensed and it's kind of like poetry. So was that a different sort of artistic task for you to establish character right away?
Well, one of the beautiful things about coming into something with no experience is that you don't know how hard it is. And it took a long time, actually. It took a lot, because the book, there was so much story. We had to condense it, and I kept making it bigger, and they were like, reel it back in there. And I was like, what the hell, this stuff happens? And I mean, 40 pages is still pretty long for a kid's book, I think, for a picture book. And there is a lot of story jammed in there. So yeah, it was definitely hard. It turned out well, and I'm glad for that. But there was a lot of revising there, because like you said, it's poetry. You gotta cut away all the things that don't matter. And I was like, no, not my jokes, but but you have to have an arc that makes sense, so you
Right.
can't just fill it with like nonsense. And
Yeah.
but at the same time, I do gag comics, so I'm used to just condensing a really sometimes a really big idea into 3 panels or 4 or 6, and really just throwing away the things that don't matter and focusing on the joke. So that experience came in handy. But then when you're talking about writing 32, 40 page book, you tend to go bigger before you go smaller, at least in my experience.
Yeah. And so, some writers I talk to, complain to me that they don't, in sort of modern publishing, that their editor doesn't actually edit. But it sounds like you had a really fruitful relationship with your editor, who sort of told you like, don't do this, go in this direction. Or
Yeah. I mean, at one point I definitely, the story, like, I threw the baby out with the bathwater, and it didn't resemble what it looks like right now. And it was my first time making a kids book, so I was all ears as to I wanted to do a good job. Um, I didn't want to be some kind of, I don't know, like, prima donna, like, do you know who I am? I make comics and everybody loves them. I'm aware that there's going to be growing pains, so I was really glad to have a strong editorial team.
yeah. And so one of the problems, if you ask me, with some children's books, is that they're too sweet and sort of saccharine, and there's some really nice irreverence in in The Princess and the Pony. And I was wondering where that comes from. Like, if you thought, let's make a picture book that's kind of irreverent, or if you feel like that's just your voice, or where does that come from?
Well, yeah, I think it's just my voice. I think it's the kind of comic voice that I've honed as a comic author and illustrator, because to me a lot of the story is about love in the end. Um, but at the same time, I often draw my own family and what they're up to, and it's never like a sitcom ending at the end of the day where there's a big group hug and we all love each other, but there's always kind of someone fighting to get in the bathroom. I remember being on the phone once and they were all talking, and like someone came in, they're like, "Where's my shoes?" And I was like, "Can you just stop talking for 1 sec while I'm on the phone, and the interviewer was like, "Ooh, sounds crazy in there." But that's real life. That's way more real life than the kind of like never-ending like saccharine like love fest. That's it feels realer to me to write a bunch of nutty warriors who love battling each other than something that seems kind of put on like that.
Yeah, yeah. So do you have a favorite character in the book?
I guess so. I like Pinecone. She took a little while to figure out. Well, not a little while to figure out, but her design came pretty quickly, and then we had to really figure out who she was, and because the pony is naturally going to be this kind of like star of the show, but then I really wanted to make a strong princess as well.
Yeah.
So, and she's like little and round, kind of like me, so I like that. I was in another interview and he was like, "She's a little stocky," and I was like, "Ain't we all?" Me too.
You have this nice piece of advice on your website for people, I guess, artists who are starting out in comics. But you really have to develop your own kind of humor. You can't just be funny. It has to be your own kind of humor.
Yeah.
Which made me wonder, like, what was that process like for you of finding your voice? I mean, I know that's a huge question, but were there fits and starts because you're so recognized for having your own sense of humor?
Thank you. I give that advice because it's the best tool that you can have. I think when you're gonna start out, and everybody like, there's an amazing thing about the internet in that you could learn to draw so much better than anybody my age could, because we didn't have it. You could just look up, you're like, "Oh, I want to learn Photoshop," or "I just will, and now I'll draw exactly like this person." I can't. And you have all these amazing tools. But then if you don't have anything that makes you stand out, then you just have this beautiful art, and it's going to get buried in all the other beautiful art. So having something that sticks out because of your personal voice, that's no one else is going to copy that. So for me, I think I chalk it up a lot to growing up in a really rural, isolated place where there wasn't that much around. And I feel like other people who grew up in rural places agree, where there was like a lack of choice, and then you gravitated towards whatever you could find that was your interest, and it ends up not being like it ends up being like a weird mixture, I suppose, of the things that you found and the things that you liked, and what you had access to. And then I went to a university where it was a liberal arts. It was very small as well, and I started making comics there. And I just tried to make myself laugh, and it happened naturally. But I think that I was lucky to have been kind of like on the sidelines for a long time before I got actually into comics proper.
Yeah. And so tell me about the production of the art in this picture book. There's digital work, but how did you create it, basically?
The production of the artwork?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I did it all on a Cintiq, the Wacom tablet, and I normally did comics by hand, and then when I started to do more illustration and picture book work, I had never really worked in color. I was quite nervous, and I knew that there would probably be a lot of things I had to change, and there were. So the digital art like medium lets you correct things easier than by hand. And but I found a way that's pretty straightforward, because I like to keep things pretty simple. I picked a palette that I liked, that I thought suited, and played around with different textures and things until it was bright and uniform, and I thought that it looked all right. But I was very nervous, definitely, because all my comics are black and white and a particular style, and this was different. This was brighter and bouncier and totally different. And then it was being published, so it had to be good.
Right. So last question. I noticed that you self-published Never Learn Anything from History. Would you, I mean, obviously now you're published by a great house, and you've got a career set. But would you recommend self-publishing for to other people?
I would, and I don't know about different types of publishing places, but in comics, the fact that I was online first and that I published my own book made me a safer bet to publishers coming my way after, because it's kind of, I think it's a little bit nebulous at first. People are like, yeah, this thing is popular online, but would it sell as a book? We don't know. And it doesn't always equal one to the next. But I think the self-publishing thing also sort of validated myself to myself as an artist, and be like, oh yeah, I can make a book, because you start off and you're just doing it for fun, and then you think, oh, maybe there's something to this, or at least in my case, I can't speak for everybody, but it was that was how I started, and it worked out. So yeah, I definitely recommend it for anybody.
Yeah, you have to do it all yourself. Huh? Now you have nice people like Sheila Marie to help you.
Yeah, lots of nice people. I mean, from the beginning, I've had a lot of nice people. There's a lot to say that like, you know, I started out and I did it all myself, but I started out and my website it looked like garbage, and people were like, this is hard to read. And then someone, you know, a friend would be like, here's how to make a nice website. And I was like, oh, wow. And then I made a nicer website. There's always somebody coming in, but that's like being a part of a community of artists in almost any medium. You're going to find that's what a community is, that everybody gets along a little bit better because there's a lot of people with a lot of experience sort of bolstering you up from all sides.
Yeah. And so more picture books in your future?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I'm working on one right now, so that's a definite yes. It's not like so many, like, I don't know how many, but at least one.
Yeah. Great. Well, congrats, and
Thank you.
you did a great job, and we'll look at this and get it ready.
Awesome.
Okay, have a good day.
Okay. I'll see you.
Bye-bye.